everyone. This video is a practical guide to build useful and pivotal system for any service business, timesheet entry, approval, and reporting. In the case that I will demo here, I will use SharePoint Online as a data store and basic reporting interface, Power Apps as a data entry and approval interface, and Power Automate for process automation. SharePoint Online is chosen for its accessibility, flexibility, and scalability, plus basic reporting features for lists of data. Power Apps is a great system for rapid building of user-friendly applications which can be connected to any data source. And Power Automate is a great integration and process automation platform that allows us to easily achieve what is required for our timesheet app. As a database for timesheet information, I created a SharePoint list with the following columns. First one is person, which is a person type column. It will store a person submitting the timesheet. Then date, which is a timesheet date, date time type column. Then 4 text columns, start time, finish time, lunch break start and lunch break finish, which are all single line text type. Hours, which is a number of hours that will be calculated between start time and finish time, excluding lunch break. And for this, I specified So I specified the number of decimal spaces as 2, so it's easier for future formatting. Then there is week ending column, a date that specifies the Friday when the week ends for this timesheet record. It can be Sunday as well, but in my scenario, I've chosen to have Friday. Status is a choice column with the following values. So it's new, submitted, approved, and rejected. And that should be good to start. So the idea is to have a timesheet record for each day with times and hours worked, plus approval status. We also need to set up security, so admins can see all timesheets and individual users can see only their timesheets. So for this, we go to list settings, and then in the advanced settings section, set up item level permissions. It's here. So read access. So we say read items that were created by the user and create items and edit items that were created by the user. So in this case, the end user will see only their timesheets and admins will see all the timesheets. Now I will build an app that allows sophisticated data entry and provide interface for approval process. We will use Power Apps and create a Canvas app. First, I add data connections. So data, in this tab, we can add data connections. So I use the Office 365 users. So it's easy to get the list of users in the Active Directory, plus to define the default values for the users. And the timesheets list, which is our database for timesheet records, which is a SharePoint list. 2 other data sources I will explain a bit later. Parameters. I added 2 application parameters. One is called person and another called week ending. So when the values are passed into the application in the URL, we will initialize the default values for the person and the week ending. So here as well, in the app on start function, I just do the following actions. So I set a current user. If the parameter is provided to that parameter value, so my idea is that it will be an email of the person, and if it's not provided, we get the email of the current user. So current user is the user function, and we get an email of the current user who opened the application. Then I set a default week ending variable, and again I check the value of the person. If the person is not provided, which means the parameter is blank, then I construct a date which is the Friday of the current week. Otherwise, I use the parameter which is passed in the URL. And because this application is for Australia, I need to pass the en-gb as the language for the date value formatting, which means the day, month, and year. Plus, I also do some plumbing here. So I get the current timesheet records, and I filter the timesheets value, the timesheets list using the week ending and the person email of which is the current user. Now, moving on to user interface. So I place a gallery control, which is this one, and the items I set to the following formula. So I filter the timesheets list in SharePoint by week ending field, and I pass the date value constructed using year, month, and day of the default week ending, which means either the current week, Friday, or the value of which comes from the parameter. And an email is the email of the current user. So whatever displayed here is filtered for this person and this week ending parameter. Then I put the heading or the gallery header. So this is just a rectangle, and I put some labels on the top. So this is called the table labels group, which includes all those different labels that display just the text. I also set their coordinates relatively. So for example, if I move the first label further, all other labels will shift as well to the side. And I achieved that. So date label is the first one. So then the start time, for example, the X coordinate is relative to the date label coordinates and width, and also the Y coordinate as well. For the gallery item template, I've chosen the daytime picker to capture timesheet date, then text boxes for different time values, start, finish, lunch break, etc. Those text boxes basically represent the values that will go to the data source and the SharePoint fields. Total hours label, which is a calculation, and this is the formula. So I calculate the difference between the start time and finish time, and in hours, and take into account the lunch break as well, or some other break, depending on your scenario. You can use this case to adapt it to your scenario as you wish. And then there is two buttons. One is save and another is delete. So save is basically patching the current item from the data source using the following values. So we basically grab different values from controls, and because the person is the type of person in SharePoint, so it's slightly a bit more complex than just passing some text values. And patch means saving, and then delete, we just remove the current item from the data source. Then the person combo box, it's basically to display available users, and the items is the following formula. So Office 365 uses data source, and we search user. When we start typing a name, it will bring up the top 10 records from the data source. So we don't need to display entire Active Directory to choose from. We just do the search, so which is more clever approach. And the week ending picker, which is the default value, is the default week ending. And on select, for example, if we change the value, then on select, we just change the default week ending variable, and then we get the current timesheet records by filtering, again, filtering the SharePoint list. Adding a record to the timesheet functionality is implemented with a button, with a plus button. Quite intuitive. So when you select it, it does the following formula. So it creates a record. We're using the patch function in the timesheets list in SharePoint, and it just provides the title, the week ending, and the person, because then we need to just filter that using that those values, and they are critical. So there will be a row created in SharePoint, and hence it will appear here as well. And yeah, it will make it visible in the gallery control. When the timesheet is ready to be submitted, the author clicks the submit button, which is changing the status to submitted of the timesheet records, and then it runs the Power Automate flow. So this Power Automate flow sends an email to the approver and sends a link to the application with the parameters. So then the approver will open this app and will be able to approve. So it's grayed out because there is no record still. So the function for display mode, it does a few checks. So for example, if the values are submitted or approved, then it will be disabled. And if not, then it basically means it's ready for submission. And when the approver receives the timesheet application, the approval and reject button will be visible, and the formulas are similar to submission, just the different values for the statuses, and also we submit who actually approved, which is the current user. That's the difference. And the rejection the same. This is the demo, how the application actually works. So I've selected a user here, and the week ending was a default one. So today is 25th of August, and it calculated the week ending Friday, and I submit the records for this week. For example, I do Monday, and no lunch break. So you see, it automatically calculated the hours. Something went wrong. I think I needed to save it. So let's do, yeah. saving, so now it won't disappear. And then there was a lunch break. Okay. Today. And no lunch break as well. So just to demo, we have this week, and presumably that's all for this week that I worked, or this person worked, and I submit. So what we've seen happening is that this function changed the status of those records in SharePoint, and the flow in the backend sent an email to the approver that the timesheet is submitted. So I received an email which says timesheet submitted for the person week ending this. Please review and approve. I click the link, and it should take me now to the timesheet of Alex, where I can continue my approval process. So I'm not allowed to submit because I'm not the user who submitted the timesheet. I'm the approver, and I would say yes, okay, this is all approved, great. So what it does now in the backend, it updated the status of those records to approved, and then set an approver as myself in this case. Also, what it did, it sent an email to Alex saying that his timesheet was approved, and send a PDF record as well. Oh, sorry, PDF document with the approval. So this is the email that is received by the submitter. So it has the approval status, so it was approved, and also attached is the PDF, which has all the records plus when it was approved and by who, just for the future record, if PDF documents are required in this case. Power Automate flow. The flow itself is quite simple. First, I initialize the necessary variables, person name, email, etc. And some of them are coming from Power App, for example, person email and name. And when you define it, there is a place called holder called Ask in Power Apps. So first, for example, when I created the flow for the person name, I just clicked Asked in Power Apps, and the Power Automate automatically created a name for this, and that name will be available as the passing parameter in the Power App later. Make sure when you name your activity, you provide the same name as the parameter name, because if I click Ask in Power Apps, it will grab the name of this activity, whatever it was, it's say initialize variable, and it will say initialize variable underscore like this, initialize variable underscore value, which is quite meaningless. So make sure the name of the activity before you click Ask in Power Apps is the same as the actual object name, for example, this variable name. So I create variables, week ending also a parameter, and others. Also, I create HTML texts for the emails, because further, when the email activity is used, every time you open an editor, it becomes a mess if you put some links with parameters as well as HTML. So it's safer to use the HTML text variable, which is a string. So I did two for submission email and approved email text. After this, the next activity is getting the timesheet records. And it's just query the SharePoint list, pretty straightforward. So date time field is filtered in the format of year, month, and day, and the person/email with capital M equal to the person email, which is a parameter that we receive from the Power App. And for each record that I return, what I do is I generate so I add the HTML text to the PDF HTML text, which is my resulting table with all the data for the timesheets. And then I increment the total hours for each row, so it's in the end there is a total and the set approver and approval date as well, which I will display in the final PDF. So then I finalize the table and put all the totals and who approved when. Then I create an HTML file using the OneDrive for Business activity. So I generate just the HTML file with the text that I generated before, pretty straightforward, and then convert this file into a PDF. So this is quite easy and simple. Then I check the status, which is also coming as an operation name from the Power App. And depending on the value, I either send an email to an approver, so if it's a submitter, or so it's a submission email with a few, so I put the text, so you see here, it's just quite simple. I just add a variable, or I notify if it was approved, I just notify submitter that the timesheet was approved. After the workflow is saved, if it's in the same environment as the Power App, I can then add it as the data source in the flow. So how it happens, for example, I've chosen a button which will start my flow, and on the ribbon or on the menu, I select action and then Power Automate. What the flow environment does, it shows me available workflows, and I choose this one to add. Because I've already added, I won't do this again, but that was going to happen. So for example, I add this timesheet operation flow and then specify parameters. So it highlights me, okay, so first the object name, so which is the type of the operation that I'm doing, then a few other parameters. So I pass the person name, email, and then the week ending parameter. And that's all for now. This example solution is quite useful, easy to create and scale, and demonstrates 3 platforms working together to deliver value. You can use this app from anywhere and streamline data entry, approval, and reporting processes when doing timesheet recording. The series are exclusive to Bobo's Big Blog TV, so please subscribe and click the bell button to get all the updates and interesting content from our channel regularly. Goodbye.